let's give a warm welcome to the Nordstrom Innovation Lab.
Well, we're going to try our luck with YouTube to play a short clip while we get mic'd up in the back. I think we even heard that YouTube went down today. Yeah, that's a good excuse, yeah. So let's see. Yeah.
I'm J.B. Brown, the Nordstrom Innovation Lab man, and this is the lab. We work on 1 week experiments. Somebody will have an idea and we'll find a way to figure out how to prove if the idea is going to work. The Nordstrom Innovation Lab is a lean startup inside of a Fortune 500 company. A typical day in the Innovation Lab starts at about 9:30 where we'll have our stand-up meeting and figure out what we're going to do for that day and what we're going to try and accomplish. Once we've done that, our work is visible on a Kanban board and people then start pulling work throughout the day to knock off what we're trying to accomplish. And then at the end of our week, we have a retrospective meeting where we talk about not necessarily about the work we accomplished, but how we do as a team. We may create a prototype, a working prototype of software that we write. We may also just create a presentation based on leaner methods. So paper prototypes will draw things out and then put them in front of people and say, okay, what would you click on now? And they use a pen to say what they're going to click on and then determine if it's a good solution, and if it is, then work on a more functioning prototype. The most exciting part about working at this space is a team that works on it, bonds together, and just a community of people that just want to work together and find out the real results. It's really fun, and you don't have to have that red tape getting in the way. As we evolve and have new competitors, we will need to take risks, but not lose money while we're taking those risks. So the gains are always market opportunities. Do you get more customers or push your brand out to more people? The reason you want something like this in your company is because startups out in the industry are going to be doing this anyway, so you might as well take advantage of it and benefit from it instead of having them be competitors and having them come up with the new, fast, cool idea. We should do it ourselves and have it be normal.
So, good afternoon. I think everybody's mic off. One of you guys come on in. My name is Ryan Rosenzweig. I'm a designer and the Open Innovation Coordinator for the lab. This is Marius. He's our lab manager. Masano, who is a designer and design researcher. David, who's one of our developers and worked also on Nordstrom.com. And Ben, who is an innovation coach and design thinker for our team. So we very intentionally brought a multidisciplinary team. We're about 20 people. And have any of you seen the YouTube video that I think went through a few agencies about our flash build that we did in the store on the Sunglass app? Yeah, a few of you. This was connected to it. Essentially, we went in the store and we had all these ideas that we wanted to try, and we decided that instead of thinking so much insulated in our group, we wanted to be able to just go and try it in the store. So we did in a week, we built something. And I would encourage you, if you want to learn more about us, go see that. But today, we're going to take the opportunity, you guys click to the next slide up there, I grab the clicker. We're going to go through 3 stories that we're going to tell you about. This is the first time that we've had the opportunity, that we've taken the opportunity to come through and share where we've gone since that was about a year and a half ago that we did the flash build, to kind of tell you about the evolution of the way that we work with innovation at Nordstrom, what our team looks like, and how we're trying to do all the things that we're expected to do with customers with Delighted. We're incredibly honored to be among this group of people. There are a lot of retailers. I'm sure there are a lot of people here who have done work for online retail and in-store experiences. And it's really special for us to be a part of that community. And we hope we can give you some insights on that today. So today, we're an agile team, so we'll be kind of agile in the way that we work things. And as much as we want to share these stories with you, we also want to leave plenty of time to be able to engage with you. So if you have questions, we'll field them. We've got a section, but we want to involve you as part of this team. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it along. We're going to take our first section, give you an idea of how we look at innovation at Nordstrom, and Maurice is going to talk about risky business.
I've got a mic, and sounds like I am live. Hi, everybody. Okay, so beginning my story. Most of you have probably heard that innovation is risky business. And depending on the sources that you read, you may have encountered that if you're deliberately involved in innovation, that your chances of failure are anywhere from 75% to 90% to even 99%. So clearly the odds are against you. And so what does that really feel like? What does it mean to work in innovation and have those sort of odds against you every day? So I put together a little thought experiment for us to try out. And so the way this works is in order to come up with the innovation, what we're going to do for this simulation is you would have to guess the image that's going to be on one of the next slides. And if you can guess correctly, the payout for your investments is, let's say, I'm going to throw out some numbers here, 200 to 1. So, so if you were to invest $1,000 in this innovation, customers would reward you with $200,000. But if you were to guess the image incorrectly, you would lose your investment. So before I reveal what that image is, who would actually want to play this game with real money? Is there any show of hands? One very, very brave person. Okay, so I'm going to give you all a moment. We'll play this game for free. I'll give you a moment to think what that picture is going to be. Okay, here it is. So did anybody guess that I was going to reveal Shark Soldier? I didn't think so. The thing is, you know, innovations are often very surprising and unexpected. Now, if there were somebody who was lucky enough to guess that I was going to display this picture, you know, what would it be like if you were trying to innovate continuously and come up with a new innovation and one after another, after another, after another? It's like, how long could you rely on luck until this losing game? I mean, how many possibilities are there that I could have displayed, right? Inanimate objects, animals, flowers, who knows, right? And if the payout's only 200 to 1, well, eventually you'll lose out. So we need to change the rules as a game, as a team involved in innovation. We need a secret weapon. And for us, that started off with experimentation and doing discovery. So one of the major reasons that innovations tend to fail so much is that there's an extreme amount of uncertainty involved. So what if for a low cost, we could uncover a small bit of the next picture that we're about to see? And at any time, we can make that large bet, but we don't necessarily have to do it immediately. So let's see what happens after we do a little bit of discovery. So we start to see our first little bit of information about this innovation. So is there anybody willing right now to go ahead and make that investment? A few more people? Okay. What does this look like right now? Darth Vader. Okay, so we're ready to say, this is a picture of Darth Vader. I'm ready to make the investment. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward. Let's say, what if we were to persist with the experimentation and the discovery? So let's not go and deliver a project just yet. Let's keep doing this. I'm going to fast forward through several experiments at once, and let's see what happens. Surprise! Yes, it is Darth Vader, but now the context is totally different. You know, Darth Vader in an ocean, holding a bottle of water, pouring water out of what looks to be a Brita. What is that? But as you can see, you know, doing a little bit of experimentation does help you greatly narrow down the realm of possibilities. So about a year ago, when the video was created that you just saw, experimentation and going fast really was our biggest secret weapon in innovating. So we were doing 1-week experiments, and we had a whole bunch of different ideas to try. So we had a new idea that we tried each week, and at the end of all of that, we had one of two outcomes. We would either pitch it for cash if we found out their experiment was successful, or we would pitch it to the trash, and that was the end of that. So as a result of this, a couple of innovation patterns emerged. And the first pattern was jump to conclusions. Well, that doesn't seem quite right, does it? Let's try a different one. You may have heard this one before. If at first you don't succeed, that's right, then quit. Well, it turns out that these were actually anti-patterns because we were very focused on speed. The fact that there were so many options, so many possible ideas, and so few of them that would actually be correct, we were focused on trying to figure out how to get through that in a way that where we would eventually hit a winning innovation within a reasonable amount of time. But as a result of focusing on ideas and on speed, these are two patterns that emerge. So today, things are a little bit different. So we still do one-week experiments, but at the end of the experiment, what we look at is, do we pivot or do we persevere? And pulled from the Lean Startup, which we pretty much all have read in the lab. And pivot is the decision that happens when our experiment fails. And that is to say, we're going to try something slightly different, but we're not going to totally leave this space entirely and try something completely unrelated, but rather we keep one foot firmly planted in the ground. Whereas persevere is really, okay, this experiment was a success, and now it's time to go to the next level of fidelity or the next level of scale and see if our idea still holds water. The next thing we look at, and on the other side of the experiment, before and even during, is really building empathy and understanding our customers through a variety of different means. But what we're trying to do is figure out what are those interesting and important problems that all customers have, or even any customer has, and then how might we go and solve those problems. So put those together, and now what we've got is that we're sticking to a customer and to a problem, rather than, oh, look at that, this idea failed or succeeded, time to move on to the next. So we're really focusing on those customer problems rather than focusing on our ideas. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, really what's going on is that people are precious, not the ideas. So how do we go and validate that the ideas we do end up with are actually relevant to the people we're interested in? Ben will help us answer that. And David.
All right, is this on? Can you hear me? All right, excellent. So the first way that we solve this problem is we had to solve the problem, how do we keep those ideas from becoming precious? And one of the ways that we do that is we prototype. So this is a quick exercise. How many of you out there are sort of comfortable and familiar making prototypes that look like this? You, okay. Prototypes that look like this? A few more hands. And finally, how many of you use play or storytelling for prototyping? Got a few hands out there. So we really think about prototyping as a way to keep your ideas from becoming too precious, to really experiment and play before they get too advanced.
So this is a type of graph you probably are all familiar with. Basically, the moral is it's much cheaper to fail early on in the cycle. To fail up there in the top right, that's where enterprise IT projects get a bad name, right? They build and build, spend millions of dollars and months, and it gets to market and it just falls flat. So our mission in the lab is to be the team that really focuses in those early stages and do a bunch of experiments and either take that back to our IT delivery teams and say, yeah, this is something that we have a lot of validated learnings that looks like something you should be pursuing, or the opposite. This doesn't look like it's going to work. I think we just need to stop now and we'll look on the next thing.
So with those first three slides, so there's all sorts of different prototypes, right? You got physical prototypes, you got sort of the visual, the interaction it looks like, you have storyboard and experience and space prototypes. And we look at all of those. But I think overarching all of that is we look at these different modalities for how we do prototyping. The first one that we do early on, we call it building the thing. So one of the things that we've seen is that ideas tend to be really safe and become really precious when they're locked inside your head. So, has anyone ever been in a situation, you're in a team meeting, you got this great idea, you're trying to explain to everyone else, you're just not getting it. Anyone ever been there? And if they could just see the vision that you have inside your head, they would see that it's the most brilliant idea. And so the more that goes on, the more precious that idea tends to be, and the more you want to push it forward. So before we get to that stage, one of the things that we try to do is really have this bias towards action mentality. So we sort of manifest our ideas, make them physical, and put them out there, put something physical for the team to respond to. And so what we see happening when we do that is, all of a sudden, all these underlying ideas, and that great idea you had in your head for the sunscreen robot that patrols up and down the beach, which is going to make $1 billion. You go and you start building it out of duct tape and cardboard and foam core. You show it to the team. They might help you see, some underlying issues or problems to think about. And then by making that idea, sort of putting it into that collective consciousness, you unlock the creativity of the entire team. So now it's not just you trying to go and explain it so everyone agrees. You need the entire team to get that radical collaboration, bring their viewpoints and sort of their perspectives. So we build to think early and often. We build to learn. And so when we do that, we think about creating experiences that really put us in our customer shoes and help us understand a particular journey map or a particular interaction that they might have. And really sort of we call it prototyping for empathy. So we may not actually be building any final product, but we're building an experience to help us deepen our understanding of what that customer is going through. And then finally we have building the test, so getting those ideas out there, and once again, early and often, putting them into the hands of our customers and seeing how they respond, seeing what they do with them, before we invest too much of that time, too much of that money, and get too far up this chart here.
So MVP, that's a term that we've heard a few times already today. Minimum viable product is the way Eric Ries would define it. But sometimes we play with that P. Sometimes the product is actually a prototype. So a minimum viable prototype may be just some sheets of paper with some drawings on it. It may be something built out of foam core. It may be an actual online experiment. A/B testing can be a great way to put an MVP out in front of a small subset of customers. Nordstrom, is a company that has a pretty high bar when it comes to putting something in front of a customer. So it can be a difficult discussion to say, we want real customers to come interact with this. But if you can use an A/B test and just maybe siphon off a very small subpopulation, that can be a great way to get something out in front of customers and get some validated learnings. So the MVP is kind of a concept that we use a lot.
All right. So the last thing we think about when we're doing prototyping is we call it multiple intelligences of prototyping. So we have all these different formats that we use. We do body storming, we do paper prototyping, we do concierge MVP from the Lean Startup, we have foam core and duct tape and cardboard lying around the lab. But one of the things we're thinking about is what are those different intelligences of the prototype? So how do we think about it spatially? What does that space look like? How do we think about it visually? What's that visual experience? What are the kinesthetics? What are the interactions? What is the story? So we come at the prototypes from all these different angles, and so we're putting those constraints to think about it in different ways. So if you've been doing a paper prototype for a long time, stepping out and saying, okay, what's the space that prototype exists in? What does that look like? That's a really great way to start to think about it in a different way. So things that we've learned, things that we think about as we're going through this, you can always go leaner. As Marty said, we're still on track for trying to run an experiment every single week. And when we started that and made that commitment, it felt like that was pretty fast. But what we discovered is over the last couple of weeks, we've been doing these experiments, and we'll line up maybe 50 people from the community, set up the test, have them ready to go, which is great. And then all of a sudden we realized that we're thinking about, what's our warm-up activity? What are the prizes that we have? Do we have drinks and do we have food? And we're thinking about all these different aspects of the prototyping process that are sort of, above and beyond just testing that core idea. So even at the 1 week level, I think what we've learned is you can always be leaner, you can always be smaller. And I think it's great to do those large scale. And if you can get 50 people to run through your idea, that's great. But maybe you can start with 3 or 4 people, work out the kinks, rather than trying to anticipate all those kinks ahead of time. So you can sort of apply the full build, measure, learn process to the prototyping, even before you get to the final idea. Planning metrics, which I'm sure all of you guys got there far before us. But one of the things that happens with a multidisciplinary team is we go out, run an experiment, we come back, we sort of ask the question, what did we learn? And we have an engineer, and a designer, and a developer, and a design researcher, and someone from strategy all sitting in the room. They think they all get really excited about different things, and you have all these conversations of 5 different viewpoints of what happened, what that means for the next iteration. So one of the ways that we found to avoid that is to be really, really harsh and critical in planning those metrics ahead of time. So really drill down, know what you're testing, make sure you focus on that, avoid sort of that feature creep in those metrics. And then when you get to the end, you can say, okay, this was a metric we were looking at, did we meet it, did we not, and in either situation, why and what happened. So really, really try to hone in and drill down on those specific metrics. And then finally, be imperfect, which we're going to talk a little bit more in just a little bit. So a couple lessons learned from doing this experimenting, doing prototyping.
Yeah, so one of our lessons learned is you really want to keep track of, you want there to be a correlation between what you put into an experiment and the data you're going to get out of it. Recently, we've done an experiment that entailed a physical installation in a couple of stores, and it was a big project, much bigger than what we would typically take on. And in retrospect, I have to wonder, could we have done something just in a back room that was cheaper and that we could have got the same learnings much quicker than what we're finding we're getting right now. So it's just, and conversely, you don't want to, go to your CIO or your corporate strategy team with maybe paper prototypes. Maybe you should go with something a little more high fidelity for them. So it's part of that planning process and making sure you're getting the most bang for the buck.
So being okay with failure. So this was a really hard lesson for us to learn. Nordstrom has this incredibly strong culture of delighting the customer in every experience that we deliver. And so one of the things that's been hard for us and that we've learned over time is that when you go out and you're doing these prototyping sessions, it's not about delighting the customer, and it's not about selling the experience or trying to sell them on what your idea is. It's really about learning from them. And sometimes in order to learn, you really have to create these imperfect scenarios. It's not going to be perfect. If it was perfect, it would be in that final production mode. So being okay with that failure, being okay with sitting in a space with 10 customers who are telling you how much they hate your idea. And I think sort of the value there is it better to have those 10 customers telling you early on, this is the worst idea we've ever seen, or is it spend 2 years rolling it out, put $10 million into delivery, and then have your entire customer base give you that same message. And then finally, so the last tweetable acronym I'll leave you guys with is OSHA, which we've co-opted. So in the lab, this has come to stand for Oh Snap, we've been harboring assumptions. And so what happens is in lab, whenever we start to see a situation like this, sitting around, very serious faces, we've been at the conference table for a long time, it's a reminder to us that if we're starting to have these conversations and we're not able to make quick decisions, we're not able to know what direction we should take, that's probably because we've lost touch and lost contact with our customers. As soon as we go and it becomes sort of that internal debate, we know that we've strayed too far from the path. So to get in order, sort of inspired by OSHA, we've created two sort of warning labels on all of our studio boards. So the first thing that we track is the number of conversations that we've had with users, the number of users that we've talked to. So over the course of every engagement we run, we have a running tally. So on day one, might be 2 users, go do a couple tests, we start going up to 10. But anytime we see that number sort of staying stationary for too long, it's a good reminder we should probably get out of the building and talk to some folks. And then finally, the number of days since we left the lab. So along those same lines, every morning when we're going through and doing our studio stand-up, we go and if we talk to users the day before, number stays at 0. If we didn't talk to anyone, we go and start tallying it up. And so when this number starts to get to 5, 6, 10, 15 days since we've actually left the building, once again, it's a great reminder to us that we probably need to step outside ourselves and go get some customer feedback. So I think what we'd leave you with on this is these are the ways that we're thinking about prototyping. We're always hungry for more. So via Twitter, after this conference, we'd love to engage with all of you and find out sort of how you think about prototyping and how you use it in your teams.
So I think this is off. So I think for each of us, many of us are with agencies, some of us have been embedded in large organizations. We're in a diversity of places. What's interesting about a case study is we're trying to give you an inside look at how all this comes together for us. Many of us have experimented with these things, and much of what we've learned has been through trial and doing these things, as well as by learning from other people. Just yesterday, we went through Ziba, we met their team, and learned about their process, and they were fascinating the way they weave together the different disciplines, their capabilities. But out of those capabilities, there are also tensions. I mean, you can see right through this window, we have our wonderful store. It's a nice little banner. It's a nice outside. But there are tensions, and you can prototype, but there's also this question of what is scary. So we've all been sitting in these chairs. We're going to get you up several times in the next 15 minutes. But this first one involves just your vote. So which is scarier, the Halloween special? What's on the left or what's on the right? So people who think it's a thing on the left, raise your hand. Right? Yeah, that's a whole lot of people. People who think it's a thing on the right. Are you kidding me? Like, even in a psychology class, I mean, your one-on-one professor would say something's messed up. Like this abandoned dungeon of a place that exists maybe below a city, or this nice, crisp, clean access to a rural office place. How is that more scary? That's a tension that many of us face. Many of us run away from one or the other. As a designer, I'm looking at this space with these tall ceilings and these great poles. I'm thinking, awesome studio space. I'll find a way to get light in there somehow. But in reflecting, and we talked about this as a team, these are both scary, but what's scarier is in neither of these situations are you that close to your customer. In both these situations, whether it's a delivery team that's working in pods in another country within the same city as you, both are getting to a point, but neither of which are intimately involved with the customer. So for us, the best place, we have to constantly focus, again, kind of what Ben was talking about, is getting out of our lab. And we also very intentionally stay in a space where it's similar to the rest of our company, because we want to be able to get work done and collaborate so that things can make it to our customers. We have other ones too.
Absolutely. So, which would you be more afraid to present to your stakeholders? The scribble with kids' drawings or a fully working prototype? Hands up if it's the kids' drawing. Hands up if it's the fully rendered prototype. Trick question. Both have a place. So, for us, delighting your customer means flexibility. As Ben mentioned earlier, we have a variety of different methods that we use for prototyping. So there are instances where when we're working with stakeholders and we want them to keep their imaginations open and let go of their assumptions, we really like to use these imagination building tools like kids prototypes or pipe cleaners or body storming. Those low resolution prototypes are really helpful in those instances. However, there are some times when you're trying to understand viability or feasibility of something where it really is helpful to have that fully rendered prototype. And it all depends on what kind of information you're trying to get. Speaking of information, how would you rather get your information? From the living room of a hoarder or from the safety of your computer screen? Hands up for the hoarder house. Really? Hands up for behind your computer screen. Well, behind your computer screen may be physically more safe. For us, we really love to talk to our consumers. Although we tend to be a little bit more design research qualitative heavy, we get a lot of value from that market research, as does the rest of the organization. So with that, we also realize that market research, traditional market research, has its limitations. So while a report may tell us that a customer spends $2,500 a year in our store and they're a level 3 rewards member and they're extremely likely to recommend Nordstrom to their friends, until we actually visit this person in their living room and wade through their filth, we may not realize that this person doesn't even have friends to recommend us to. We won't understand why they're buying their stuff at Nordstrom, what it is that we give them. And so it's important for us to get those deep insights, to understand, to get that empathy for our customer. We believe that empathy is something that has to be experienced in order to really be understood, in order for us to create something truly meaningful. And for that reason, we involve everybody on our team in that empathy building process so that we're all on the same page. That isn't to say that there's one set path to anything, everything's useful. But it's that empathy combined with that basic landscape of knowledge that really helps us understand what it takes to create a delightful experience, what questions are yearning to be answered. As a lab, we're not really built to be a one-way communication device. We generally have discussions with people. And so at this point, after you've learned a little bit about us, we'd like to open up the discussion to you guys with any questions that you may have. We'd also like to invite you up on the stage with us, so it's not us versus you.
So we're going to do a format called a fishbowl. And what we're going to have is 2 open seats up here for you to come and join us in the discussion. And the way the rules work is that we want to try to always leave 1 seat open. So that is when a second person fills out the last seat, that is the cue for the person who was up here with us and having a discussion to kindly return back to the audience. So do we have anybody who would like to join us up here with any question you may have? Come on down. And at any point in time while we're asking questions, we won't try to solicit more people, but as we're having the Q&A, if you come up with more questions, whether they're that's great. Please be comfortable. We realize that you're sitting in the same seats all day. But at any point in time, if you have an idea for another question, just come on up. And
we know we're in between you and the people who are between us and drinks. So,
that's right. Okay.
So I wanted to know more about some spectacular failures, and specifically, what got in your way that caused you to fail?
Okay. Does anybody want to field that? Okay.
So we have a whole list of spectacular failures. In fact, even now we're incentivized more on failing than we are on our success. I mean, we certainly want to breakthrough ideas, but we're geared for discovery. And one huge failure of ours, which actually led to some of the insights that we talked about today, was we had a focus of a project, and to the people who are from Ziva, you heard the story yesterday too, the same question. About we were focused, we had a new wedding suite that was being placed into our stores, and we wanted to understand what could we build that would be a delightful experience online and in store to connect those things. And so the lab went through and knew nothing about ethnographic interviews or those types of things, but bias towards action, just go talk to people, figure it out. And we pulled out all of these things around how the women thought about their wedding, even before they were engaged. How there were things that would be collected, there would be boxes, or there would be email accounts that would be hidden from their spouse or their partner. And all these things that would be stored away within weddings, they would come in and all of a sudden appear once it was time to officially plan your wedding and let everybody know, including some customers who actually would plan entire weddings and maybe multiple entire weddings and keep those in store, and then they choose which scenario they want. And there are people nodding their heads because maybe your partner did this, or maybe you participate in this in some ways. And so we identified these things that people are creating these almost like pinboards for these things. And so out of that, we created a prototype of an example that we tested, and it didn't end up succeeding. We learned some things out of that, but that was when we were on those 1 week cycles where it was try, and if you don't succeed, fail, or quit, and move on. And some of the things that stood in our way were some of our ability to be able to hand off and work with a large organization. Some of it was having some of like the courage and experience that is kind of testing those things and really building out. And also, we lacked some of the ability to pull those insights out and really stand for our customers on those. Now, you might be thinking this was about a year and a half ago. What has happened in the last year and a half?
Third largest social media site on the web.
Right, so that was our validation 4 months later. So, right? So for us, it was like, oh my goodness, hold on, you don't typically get those answers that quickly on your failure. But for us, it gave a lot of the reason for why we built these capabilities and how we've taken action on other ideas to test them further and to learn more. And it informed our decisions that we've made. That now Nordstrom as a company is a great player in Pinterest, and we are encouraging these relationships both in store and online, and Pinterest is one of those sources. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, do you guys have anything to add to that story? I think you told it. Okay.
So I have to wait until somebody else comes.
No, you can keep
Keep asking.
we'd love to have somebody else come on. Yes! Woo!
These are really comfortable.
Yeah, these, listen.
I was wondering how you've managed to balance continually innovating and, trying to fail almost and trying to succeed with these new ideas and maintaining the strong Nordstrom brand and not damaging that in any way.
It's been a challenge for sure. We've had the benefit of having some really good support from some people with a lot of influence, but we continuously need to work closely with the types of groups you have in a large company like privacy and public relations to make sure that we are presenting ourselves in a way that's consistent with the brand. So we need to sometimes take the approach of asking for forgiveness rather than permission. Then you have some more.
And I think the other part of that is that rather than sort of living in fear, where we're afraid of our customers responding the wrong way or not having a great experience, but sort of acting with that spirit of optimism and inviting customers in to really be those co-creators. And I think when we do the experiments, reframe it as we have this idea, we're not sure if it's good at all. We want you guys to come and work with us. And what we found is people get really excited to have an opportunity to be part of that innovation process. So I think it's, rather than sort of keeping your users at that arm's distance outside innovation, say, okay, we're going to test with you guys, we're going to hear your feedback, and we're going to go and silo ourselves back in the lab. It's really sort of having that constant dialogue and inviting them to be a part of the team in the process.
Thanks so much for your question. Thank you. You guys have questions, right? Yeah, that's awesome. Others? Yeah. All right.
So my question is a little bit more tactical around testing your prototypes. So 2 parts. One, how do you recruit and incentivize people to take part of the tests? And then also, how, and I know your setup as a lab is part of your work of failing, right? But what suggestions do you have for perhaps organizational culture that is not used to this idea of creating an experiment and testing it? And what kind of mindsets or kind of ways of approaching that type of work?
So the first part, how do we recruit customers? So that's where it's really important for us to use that rapid market research that we get. We have an amazing consumer insights team who can help us build some sort of screener. That we have a lot of really great focus groups in different market areas. And so we tend to combine research probably done from other companies or perhaps our consumer insights group to help us inform who we want to recruit. And I think I've worked in smaller companies, and I think I've been really fortunate to have a brand such as Nordstrom that allows us to have such a wide net of people to talk to. As far as incentivizing, that we've actually been moving towards a different model. What we've learned is that people really find a lot of reward just from being able to have a say in something. So I think before we used to test with offering a lot of Putting probably more money than we should have to encourage people to participate. And then you get a lot of those, yes, I love it, it's awesome, I always shop at Nordstrom. And so we found that really the value, it depends on how much time you're asking of people, but it's really dependent on the circumstance. A lot of times having that input is its own order.
Yeah, and the second part of your question, I mean, first of all, we see market research and data as valuable because it tells us where our customers are most likely to buy. I mean, it's not definite, but it gives us a good idea, but it doesn't tell us what to build. So getting it in the hands of users is important, and being able to listen. So there's thought components, there's ways to visualize that, but a lot of that is just inspiration, connection. But on the second part, in terms of the culture, you hit spot on mindsets. I mean, we really believe in instilling mindsets, not necessarily process. I mean, the Agile Manifesto is like close to our hearts when we're in the process of Agile, if that makes sense. Because it's the mindsets that carry us through and help us collaborate across different disciplines. And I also think that there's a component that we've been successful is that we're a self-organized team. So it's not that it's a horizontal structure. I mean, Nordstrom is a big company, but the way that we do work is you pull it. It isn't pushed on you. And I think that allows you to be able to pick the work that you want to work on and own the mindsets that are part of the culture so that you're constantly challenging yourself and learning becomes a part of it. Whereas when mindsets are forced or work is being channeled to you, you're only able to grow as much as what you receive and not what you pull. And I think it's a dynamic part of it.
And when we formed the lab, the organization, Nordstrom does not like to fail. We don't have a history of failing. We work very hard to do our very best for our customers every day. And so one of the things we did when we first formed the lab was to help our business partners be comfortable with taking some chances and failing. In fact, the way we did it was if we had a successful idea, they got all the credit. If we had a failing idea, we took all of the blame. And that was the first thing we did to boost the wheels to get that going. But the other part of that was we would never create something where a failure was catastrophic, either from a financial point of view or from a reputation point of view. We would always experiment as small as possible. So we build something quickly and try it out with only a small number of people.
Thanks so much. Did that answer your question? Thank you very much for it. I think we'll move in. We're certainly available, and we'd love to have a conversation with as many people here as possible. I'm sure we have a lot of people who have relationships with Nordstrom the other way. We'd love to hear about that too. But for now, we've got one last piece that I think Ben's going to kick off, and then we'll get to the people that are in between us and drinks. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, so the last thing we wanted to sort of introduce and share with you guys is another one of the lab tools that we use. It's a tool called Retro. So at the end of every week, every Thursday, the lab gets together and we have these retrospectives where we talk about things that we did that we really liked, things that we wish we'd done differently, and things that we learned, and ideas to try to follow in the week. So what we want to do is invite you guys into the largest retro in the history of Nordstrom Innovation Lab. Invite all of you guys to participate with us. So we're doing a format called I Like, I Wish, What If. So very simple, just think of quick thing about things that you liked, things that you wish, and what if. And so what we'd like you guys to do is think about this presentation as well as the entire conference. So I really like the diversity of speakers and sort of the new thoughts we have to take home with us. I wish that the Wi-Fi had been working and the chairs had been maybe slightly more comfortable. And what if, we built some connections today and we're able to, form some even more radical collaboration by learning from each other. And so the format that we're going to invite you guys to do this in is called 1, 2, 4. So as soon as we say go, just on your own, take about 60 seconds and just reflect on your own any of those three things. We'll give a call out in about 60 seconds, find a partner, and just quickly with your partner, share out with each other any of your reflections, any of your retro. And then finally, when we get to 4, find another set of partners in your group of 4, share with each other, do a mini group retrospective. And what we're going to do for the last one is invite you to all. So once you hear those retros from your group of 4, feel free to take any of them and retweet them. So tweet, share them out, come up to us afterwards, but share them with the entire group so we can all sort of learn from each other. So with no further ado, take about 60 seconds, go ahead and reflect on my likes, my wishes, and what ifs from today.
Okay. The conversation is great. We're glad this is going. We hope you tweet. We put a hashtag on there for, go to the next slide, wherever it went. Okay. Hashtag retro. Added on the hashtag delight 2012, which means you have maybe 80 characters to write something with your name. But thanks so much for participating, and thank you so much. We really enjoyed being a part of today. We're going to pass it back over to the Delight team to be able to close down.